Okay, in this handout, we started off by, they want you to find the slope of these equations, and then we also want to find the perpendicular slope for these equations. So this one is already in slope-intercept form, so y equals mx plus b. So the slope is whatever this coefficient is, and so we can see that this is going to be -1 times x, so my slope is -1. If I've got an equation that x equals 7, that means y can be anything. So that means I've got a vertical line. If I've got a vertical line, the slope is undefined. This equation, I'm going to change it into slope-intercept form to make it easy to find the slope. So if I subtract x on both sides, I get -3y equals -x plus 5. And then if I divide both sides by -3, I get y equals 1/3 x minus 5/3, so my slope is 1/3. Here, if I do distributive property with the 2/5, we end up with this. My slope is -2/5. As you can see, I really didn't need to do distributive property with the 2/5. Here, my slope is -3. So to figure out the perpendicular slope, so just for reference, so if my slope is equal to, I'm just going to say a over b, right? If I've got this value for my slope, my perpendicular slope is going to be equal to the opposite sign and then the reciprocal of this fraction, so b over a. Okay, so that's how you find your perpendicular slope. So for example, if this slope is -3, we could call this 3 over 1, right? So if this slope is -3 over 1, we're going to change the sign, so now it's positive, and now the new slope is going to be 1 over 3. Let's do question B. I added x over 4 on both sides, and then I divide both sides by 2, and I get y equals 1/8 x. So my slope for this equation is 1/8, and so the perpendicular slope is going to be opposite sign, and the reciprocal, so now it's going to be 8 over 1. Okay. Here, if I have y equals -3, that means my slope is 0 because this is a horizontal line, right? So this gives me a horizontal line. So if my slope is 0, then the perpendicular slope is going to be straight up and down, which is undefined. Okay, so this equation, I rearrange it to look like this. So y equals 2/3 x minus 2/3. So that slope of this line is 2/3. So the perpendicular slope, change the sign, and get the reciprocal. Okay, so if I want to make a Voronoi diagram, and I've got two sites. This is site A, and this is site B. So step 1 is we're going to find the midpoint. And then what we're going to do is we're going to find the slope of this line, and then we can get the slope of this line because this is going to have a perpendicular slope, because this pink line here is a perpendicular bisector between these two sites. So if I've got a point and I've got a slope, then I can use my equation from point slope form. Once again, here's my I could put in the perpendicular slope here, and I could put the coordinates of the midpoint here, and then I will have the equation for the Voronoi diagram edge. So, and as we've said before, the pink line here is called the edge, which is a boundary line between the two different sites. So we're going to be practicing this on the next page. So like I said, I could figure out a midpoint here, halfway between A and B, and then once I figure out the capital M is for the midpoint, and then I've got my perpendicular, I've got my slope for this here, so then this is going to have a perpendicular slope. Okay, and whenever I have 3 points, so let's just look at these two. Here's my boundary edge for that. Let's look at these two. This is my boundary edge for that. And when I look at these two, here's my boundary edge for that. If I have them all merging, they are always going to intersect. When you have 3 sites, the boundary edges are always going to intersect at one spot, and that is called a vertex. Okay. Okay, so let's just look at one thing at a time. So I've got coordinate A and coordinate B. I plotted this on the grid. So I could look at the picture and see, okay, it goes up 1 over 3, up 1 over 3. I know the slope is 1/3. I could also use my slope formula, which is 0 minus -2 divided by 5 minus -1. So I end up with 2 over 6. Once again, my slope is 1/3. So if the slope between here and here is 1/3, my perpendicular slope is going to be the reciprocal of this and the opposite sign. So the slope of this pink line is going to be -3. Now I also need the midpoint. So we take the average of the x values, so 5 plus -1 over 2, comma, 0 plus -2 over 2. And then I'm going to have 5 plus -1, which is going to give me 5 minus 1, which is 4 over 2, and -2 over 2, so it's going to give me -1. So my coordinate of the midpoint is 2, -1. Okay, and then and then I can draw my line, because I know the slope is -3, so I go down 3 over 1, or I can go this way to the left 1 and up 3. This has a slope of -1. Okay. Once again, plot the 2 points. You could look at the picture. You can say, okay, my slope is -1/2. Let's find out the midpoint. So 2 and 6, average of those is going to give me 4. And let's look at the y values, 6 and 4. 6 plus 4 divided by 2 is going to give me 10 over 2. So the average of the y values is 5. I plot that coordinate 4, 5. And then we know the slope between here is -1/2. So my perpendicular slope, opposite sign, reciprocal, is going to give me +2. Okay. I'm going to move this up. Okay, construct the Voronoi diagram and then get the equations. So I plotted these 2 points. So I found out the midterm. So we took the average of the x values, -2 and 4, divided by 2, we get 1. Take the average of the y values, 5 plus 3 over 2, it's going to give me 8 over 2, which is going to give me 4. So I plot the midpoint, which is 1, 4. Okay. So now that I've plotted the midpoint, let's find the slope. y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So 3 minus 5 divided by 4 minus -2. So 3 minus 5 is -2. 4 minus -2 is going to give me 6. -2 over 6 is going to give me -1/3. So we could see that my slope is -1/3. I go down 1 over 3, down 1 over 3. I've got a -1/3 slope. So the perpendicular slope is going to be the reciprocal, which is 3, and change the sign so it's positive. So my perpendicular slope is going to be 3. So I go over 1, up 3, or to the left 1, down 3. And you can see this looks like it's perpendicular to that. Okay, so now let's find the equation of this pink line. Okay, so I pick one of the points, so let's pick the 4 and the 3, right? So I put the 4 in here for, I used the midpoint, sorry. I put the 4 in here for y, and the 1 in here for x from the midpoint formula, and then I'm using my slope formula of 3, so I plug in 3 in for the slope, and then, so here's my equation in point slope form. Now if I wanted to find it in slope intercept form, I could do distributive property with the 3, add 4 on both sides, and now I've got slope intercept form. And then if I subtract 3x on both sides, subtract 1 on both sides, now I've got it in standard form. Okay. You might want to hit pause and think about this, maybe replay and listen to it again. So, verify that -2, 5 lies on the Voronoi edge. So, -2, -5. Okay, so what I did was to verify it, I plug it into the one of these equations. So let's see, if I plug it into this equation, I can plug in -2 in for x, I can plug in -5 in for y, and then I've got 6 times -2 is 6 times 3 times -2 is -6. -6 plus 1 gives me -5, and there I've verified it. Verify that it's an equal distance from A and B. So, so for A, the coordinates of A is -2, 5. So using the distance formula, I've got x value of -2, x value of -2, -2 minus -2, it's going to give me 0. 5 minus -5 is going to give me 10, so the difference between the y values is 10. So to figure out the distance, we're going to have 10 squared, and the square root of 10 squared is going to give me 10. Now from point B, 4, 3, and this point here, so the difference between the x values, so 4 minus -2 squared plus 3 minus -5 squared is going to give me, so 4 minus -2 squared is going to give me 6 squared. 3 minus -5 squared is going to give me 8 squared. So 6 squared is 36, 8 squared is 64. Added together, that's 100. Square root of 100 is 10. So I've just verified that the distance from A to this point and the distance from B to this point are the same. We're going to be using a lot of distance formula with Voronoi diagrams. Okay. Construct the Voronoi diagram from these points. So fortunately everything here is integers, so it made it easier to do. So I plotted these points here, and then the first thing I did is I looked at the grid and I could see, okay, from point A to point B I go down 4 and over 4. So I know the midpoint is going to be down 2 over 2. Okay, and I also looked at the slope from here to here, and the slope is -1. It goes down 1 over 1. So that means the slope for the boundary edge is going to be +1 because it's the reciprocal. So this line here that I didn't draw has a slope of -1, so this here has to have a slope of 1. Okay, now let's look at from C to B. So from here to B, it goes over 8 and up 8. So the midpoint is going to be going over 4 and up 4, which puts me right there. And once again, if I'm going over 8 and up 8, from here to here, I've got a slope of positive 1. So the boundary edge is going to have a slope of negative 1. Okay? And then from A to C, it goes over 4 and up, let's see, negative 5 and up 12. So if it goes over 4 and up 12, to get to the midpoint, I'm going to go over 2 and up 6. And there's my midpoint between A and C. So that's my midpoint between A and C. And I can see that the slope from here to the midpoint, the slope is going to be, it goes rise over run. So it goes up 6 over 2. So from A to C, it goes up 6 over 2. Yeah, it's got a slope of 3. So the perpendicular slope of AC is going to be negative 3. Well, this is a slope of 3 for this line here. So the perpendicular slope is going to be negative 1/3. So going through this point, negative 1/3. So down 1 over 3. Okay, and so you can see this pink line here has a slope of negative 1/3. It goes through that midpoint, and then I drew all the pink lines, and then I got my Voronoi diagram. And you could see that I lightly traced this triangle here between the 3 points. When you're all done, you probably want to erase those lines because the Voronoi diagram is the pink lines alone. Okay. So once again, I plotted these points here. I figured out the midpoint, and I figured out the slopes. So from A to B, the slope, the change in the x is from here to here is 6, and change in the y is 2. So the slope between here and here is 1/3, negative 1/3. I go down 1 over 3, down 1 over 3. So the new slope is going to be positive 3. So from the midpoint here, I'm going to go up 1 over 3. Okay, I plotted the point halfway between A and B. Now, halfway between C to B, this is negative 5, this is positive 5. And the change in the y is 6. So I'm going to go up 3 over 5, and this is my midpoint halfway between C and B. And my slope between C and B is 3/5, up 3 over 5, up 3 over 5, rise over run, right? So the reciprocal is going to be negative 5/3. So from this midpoint, I'm going to go down 5 over 3. And then I draw that line. And then between A and C, we can see that it's going up 4 over 2, 2, 3, 4 over 2. So my slope is 2. So my reciprocal from the midpoint is going to be negative 1/2. So it's going to be down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2, or up 1 to the left 2. And there's my perpendicular slope. Last page. hit pause if you need to. From these points here, I calculated the midpoints, and I plotted the midpoints with these red dots. Okay, then so then I found, okay, they wanted you to do quite a bit. So after I found the midpoints, I figured out the slopes, and with the midpoint and the slopes, I put it into point slope form, and then I found my equations. Okay, you might want to hit pause to check your work. Let's move this up. Okay, question C was a little trickier, and we won't be doing that on this test. They asked you to find the intersection of two of the lines. And so on your TI-83 calculator, in order to do this, this is not going to be on this test, but we'll be doing this more down the road, maybe next semester. So on your TI-83 calculator, if you hit y equals, and you type in one equation, and then type in the other equation, and second trace 5 for intersect, and then you go through these process, and it'll give you the intersection. It's a decimal. We won't be doing this for this test. Now here they wanted you to complete the Voronoi diagram. So the missing boundary line was between B and C. So I looked at the coordinates and I saw, okay, it goes over 2, up 1, over 2, up 1. So the midpoint has to be there. And this slope here is positive 1/2, right? So the perpendicular slope is going to be -2. So then I used, so to the left, 1, up 2. And there's my perpendicular line between B and C. There's my Voronoi diagram edge. Okay, I could see the missing edge was between A and D, so I found that it went down 6 over 2, so the midpoint was going to be down 3 over 1. And then this slope is -3, so the other slope is going to be positive 1/3. All right, check your work.